almost all the time might not be a very good loser. But that certainly wasn't the case. If you're ever fortunate enough to beat Jerry at anything, he'd practically rip your arm out of the socket shaking your hand. He might rattle your teeth with a back slap. Or you might even get one of those famous bear hugs that everybody knew him for. But whatever he did, he'd make you feel like $1 million. That's just the way he was. And Jerry was hilarious. Now, those of you who knew him better knew how funny he was. He loved a joke, clean or dirty. And he was one of the world's greatest storytellers. He really was. Most of his stories were about growing up in Butte Falls and kids he knew and grew up with there, members of his family. Life in the woods when he was a timber faller. But a lot of times we would deliberately try to get him distracted telling stories because we knew it would lighten our workouts a little bit. And some of our fondest memories, Jared and Robert and Jim and Bob and all the rest of you guys, were just sitting around the gym and listening to Jerry spin yarns and laughing like crazy. Those were great times. He was humble. He always was more concerned about giving others credit or giving God credit than stepping into the spotlight himself. That's not to say he wasn't a heck of a showman, as you saw there. He, when it was his turn to get to the platform, it was showtime, and the crowd came alive, as you know. But for the most part, Jerry was a very humble person. He was smart, with a very common sense approach to problem solving. He could look at a piece of machinery, or he could look at a person, and within a couple of minutes, with a few minor adjustments and changes in their form or setup or stance, he could have them lifting 30 or 40 pounds more. He just had a real gift and a real talent and a great, great gift for training athletes. And everything that he did, every decision that he made was always anchored in what was best for everybody concerned. But more than anything else, he loved his family. That was really his passion. He and Pam were a perfect match. And they had a passion for life, and they never wasted a second. Weekends to them meant freedom. And they were always off to the mountains, snowmobiling, or over to the coast, riding quads. They were busy. And as I said, they never wasted a second. And I can never remember being at a meet without Pam sitting right there in the front row, cheering Jerry on every second of the way. And of course, he worshiped the ground she walked on. He loved her with all his heart. Pam's parents, Betty and Bob, really kind of became the parents that Jerry lost so many years ago. And Betty, you don't know how many times he bragged to me about your cooking and the dinners that he enjoyed over at your home. And Bob, his face would light up whenever you'd walk into the gym to take him to lunch. And as I said, he just really, really loves you guys. Of course, Jerry and his son, Jared, loved to hunt, loved to fish, loved to race anything with a motor. They shared an interest in all sports and a tremendous talent for training athletes. And the thing that was so cool is that the love and the respect and the admiration between the two of them was an amazing thing to see. And we're fortunate now to be training with Jared, and he's picked up right where his dad left off. So thank you, Jared. You know, Jerry spoke to me. Jerry spoke to me often about his daughter, Christy, his stepdaughters, Marianne and Stephanie, and of course his granddaughter, Michaela. He loved them all, as he did his big sister, Shag. They were like two peas in a pod. And Jerry always told me she was the toughest one in the whole darn family. And I believe it. You know, I could go on, and I know that I'm leaving some folks out, and I apologize for doing that. But again, you know, I can hear Jerry saying, "Shut up and sit down." He'd already be embarrassed by what I've been saying about him. And I hear you, Jerry, but before I close, before I wrap this up, I know that many of you out there are wondering how in the world he was able to pull those kind of deadlifts that you saw out there. You know, what gave him the strength and the power and the commitment to do that? Well, with 21 world records and 6 world championships under his belt, you'd think he must have he must have some type of a system, or he must have something that he did every single time to allow him to do that. Well, I watched him do it many times over the years, and I don't think he'd mind a bit if I shared just a couple of the secrets with you. He liked to get there early on meet day. He usually had 15 or 20 lifters, and he always wanted to be the first one there. And he'd always get people settled down as soon as they arrived and begin to get them thinking about what it was they were going to do that day. And then next, depending on the flight, he would start warming people up. Of course, that meant loading and unloading bars and putting on bench shirts and pulling them down and doing lift-offs. After he got done with the bench pressers, next came the deadlifters. Again, loading plates, strapping suits, tightening belts, tough, tiring, distracting work. And in between lifts, he'd sit down with the person and talk them through their next lift and help them set their weight. And man, when you came off the platform, he was the first one to congratulate you or console you if you screwed up. But he was always there for you. And in between all of this, he'd be interrupted constantly by people who had a question or wanted to shake his hand or just wanted to come by and visit. And you know what? I never saw him walk away from anybody. Never saw him brush anybody off. He was always gracious. He was always helpful. He gave advice and encouragement to everybody that needed it. And this went on all day long, hour after hour, sometimes late into the night. But then, 10 or 12 hours after he arrived, usually the last flight of the day, oftentimes the very last lifter, then it was his turn. Then it was his turn. And man, you could feel the energy in this room go up about 1,000%. You could just almost see the electricity snapping in the air. And Jerry would start getting ready to do his thing. And when he came to the platform, as I said earlier, it was showtime. And amazing things would happen. And of course, we all were here to cheer him on. So again, the question, where did he get the strength? Where did it come from? Well, I'll tell you, it came from the giving. It was the giving of the help, the giving of his strength, the giving of encouragement, the giving of advice, and the giving of the love that gave him his strength. Now, conventional wisdom will say that the more you give away of something, the less you have left over for yourself. But remember I said Jerry was really a smart guy, and he somehow figured out that by giving of himself the way he did, it somehow came back to him tenfold, and he was able to multiply that and turn it into strength and turn it into power. And, winning, breaking records, sure, that was important. But it was the giving of the love and his family and his friends that really was the most important thing to him. And Jerry would love nothing more than for each of you to remember him in exactly that way, and not just remember him, but pay it forward. That was one of his favorite phrases, pay it forward. And go out there and remember Jerry when somebody needs your help or somebody needs a hand or a little bit of advice. That would be a great tribute for him. As Jerry often said, we're not here to play, to dream, or to drift. We have hard work to do. We have heavy loads to lift. I want to thank you once again for being here and allowing me to be a part of this tribute to a great man, a man we all miss, Jerry Capello. Thank you very much.